All right, welcome back. So in this video, we're going to talk about list comprehension. So list comprehension offers a shorter syntax when you want to create a new list based on the values of an existing list. Now, we went over this just a little bit in loop lists, okay? But an example would be based on a list of fruits. You want a new list containing only the fruits with the letter A in the name. Without list comprehension, you will have to write a for statement with a conditional test inside. With list comprehension, you can do all that with only one line of code. Okay? Condition. The condition is like a filter that accepts only the items that values to true. The condition if x equals apple will return true for all elements other than apple, making the new list contain all fruits except apple. Interval. The interval can be any interval object, list, tuple, set, etc. Expression. The expression is the current item in the iteration, but it is also the outcome which you can manipulate before it ends up like a list item in the new list. The expression can also contain conditions, not like a filter, but as a way to manipulate the outcome. All right, so now let's go ahead and jump into our notebook and take a look at list comprehension. Okay, so we're inside our notebook. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to comment out list comprehension so that we know what we're doing here. Okay, now, again, list comprehension offers a shorter syntax when you want to create a new list based on the values of an existing list. Okay, so for example, if I use let's just write out a list and see how it looks, okay? And we'll do this with one line of code. So with list comprehension, you can do all that with only one line of code. So what I was referring to just before that is if you use a for statement, you have to write out a whole bunch of extra code in order to get the same result. And what I'm trying to channel you to do is do the shorter syntax. So with list comprehension, you can do all of that with only one line of code. So we're going to do one line of code for list comprehension. Okay, so I want to do our list. We're going to do equals, and we're going to do Google, Facebook. If I can type, let's see here. Facebook, and then YouTube. Okay, now when I do all three of these, and then I do new list, okay, equals, in brackets here, we do x for x in our list if a in x print our list. Now essentially what we did there is we said if the letter A is in there, print it. Okay? So what it's doing is it's taking out, based on a list of our list, you want a new list containing only the companies, Google, Facebook, or YouTube, with the letter A in the name. Okay, so Facebook has it, Google does not, YouTube does not, but it's showing all three. Now, why is that? Okay, that's the question. So we do x for x in our list if A in X. Now, if I do G and F and U, sorry, Y, not U, and I run that, what happens? We get all three. Why? Because I'm calling for G for Google, F for Facebook, and Y for YouTube. Okay? So that's one way to work with it. Now, the syntax. So the return value is a new list, leaving the old list unchanged. Condition. A condition is like a filter that only accepts the items that validate to true. Okay? So an example would be only accept items that are not Google. Okay? So the way to do that would be like this. We would do our list equals, and we'll do brackets here, X for X in our list if X equals, okay, Google. So we'll do new list, and then I'll put our list up here again, like we've been doing, to keep it simple and kind of get some repetition in here of practicing. So we got Google, Facebook, and then YouTube, okay? And what you got here is when I run that, we get an error because we have an invalid identifier. Well, I have too many characters here. So once I delete that, then I run it, what happens? We want X, not that. Okay, now I'll run it. And there you go. Now, if I print new list, I get Facebook and YouTube. Now, why did that work? Because what we did is we used the condition, which is a filter, that only accepts the items that evaluate to true. So, which statements were true? We're telling our new list here, X for X in our list, if X is greater than or equal to Google, then don't display it. But if it isn't, then display Facebook and YouTube, which is exactly what it did. Okay? The condition of if X Google will return true for all elements other than Google, making the new list contain all companies except Google. Okay? And that's why it works, because we're telling it to not display Google. We're saying leave Google out. Okay? Now, interval. The interval can be any interval object like a list, tuple, or set. So you can use the range function to create an interval. Okay? So for this, let's do, down here again, we'll do our list, down here, our list equals, and we'll do the same thing. We'll do Google, Facebook, Google, stay inside there. We'll do Facebook, and we'll do YouTube, okay? And what I'll do then is I'll do new list equals, and we'll do X for X in range. And instead of, let's do 1, okay? If X, 5, okay? Now let's run that and see what happens. Okay, so that works. Okay, now if I print new list, let's see what it will print for us. Okay, it'll print 0. Okay, because we didn't. Now if I do 10 and I run that, then I get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Now let's talk about expression. So the expression is the current item in the iteration, but it is also the outcome, which can manipulate before it ends up like a list item in the new list. So set the values in the new list to uppercase. Okay? So let's do new list equals x.upper for X in fruits. Okay? Now it's not going to find anything because I want to do our list instead of fruits, and I want to copy this and bring this down. Okay? So now let's run it again. And when I print that, when I print new list and I run it, what do we get? We get Google, Facebook, and YouTube, and they're all capitalized. Okay? The expression can also contain conditions, not like a filter, but as a way to manipulate the outcome. So the return, we can return Google instead of YouTube. Okay? So to do that, we need to copy this list here, and we'll put it down here. And then we'll do new list equals, and we'll do X if X, and then we'll do Google else YouTube, okay, for X in our list. So what it's saying is take Google out and keep YouTube in, or return YouTube in place of Google, okay? And instead of YouTube, let's do Twitter, okay? So let's use one that's not in the list. Actually, let's use YouTube. That's fine. I can't make up my mind. I'm just kidding. Print, new list, and then let's run that and see what happens. And you see we get YouTube, Facebook, YouTube, okay? So what they're doing is they're replacing Google with YouTube, okay? Now let's say that I want to replace Facebook, okay? So let's replace Facebook with Twitter. See what that does. Okay? Now I just changed out the value. So let's say that you wrote a list and it's got hundreds of different, you got hundreds of values, right? Let's say it's 100 values. The list is 100 values long. And you goofed up and you're like, okay, how do I fix this? Okay, well, what you can do is go in here, type in Twitter, and replace Facebook with Twitter. It's one way to do it, okay? So that is list comprehension, all right? So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.